Hello folks, Jason Chrisman here, JC's Bees. What I would like to talk about today is this recent cold snap much of the United States has experienced. You know, it's almost like January weather at the beginning of November. So this gives all of you new beekeepers a chance to experience what it's like to be a winter beekeeper. And I know it's very challenging for many of you, just like it was for myself many years ago. I recently had one of my Patreon followers very concerned about all of the dead bees she was finding on the landing board and out in the snow. It was a big concern to her, and I remember my first year as a beekeeper and how I was concerned with it. So right off the bat, one of the first things I want to show is not to be concerned about the dead bees on the entrance board and in the snow. Check this out. Let's say it got cold and it snowed and you notice some dead bees on the entrance of your colony or in the snow. What should you do? Well, the first thing you should do is not panic. This is definitely a normal sign. I realize as a new beekeeper, this can be a bit tough to swallow when you see something like this. Now, if we take a closer look just here, it's pretty much death all the way across. Now, if you followed me for very long, and the last couple years I've shown how you can take some of these bees that look dead, take them in the house, and they'll warm up, and some will actually come back to life. What they've done, this is a state of torpor for a lot of them. But at the same time, these bees you take in and warm up, they're probably on their deathbed anyway. They're probably late summer bees that are heading towards their death regardless of the fact that they came out in the snow and have froze. So taking them in and warming them up, that's really just more work on you, and I don't really know that you're doing the colony any favors. What it does show is you have a big heart and you don't want your bees to suffer. But this is completely normal, folks, and so is the dead bees in the snow. It's nothing to be alarmed about. Now, one thing you can do if you want is you can take your hand, sweep the dead bees off, and that's going to make it a lot easier for the undertaker bees to dispose of you or to kick you off the landing board or whatever it may be. Try and keep this entrance as clean as possible when the weather permits. Now, like I said, don't be alarmed when you see this. You see the same thing here. And it's the same thing over in my nuke yard, which is just right around these evergreens. Right over here is my nuke yard. I got the same thing going on over here. So don't panic when you see this. All right? It's completely normal. So you can see much of the snow has melted since yesterday when I recorded that footage. Got lots of nice sun, and we've actually got some 50-degree weather later on this week. I think today it's only going to get to like 45. So either way, it's much warmer than it was. A few mornings ago, I woke up to about 10 degrees, and let me tell you, that's not at all November weather. So what that did was to force the bees to cluster very tightly. It's my experience that it takes 2 to 3 days of this extreme cold before the bees all start to build this solid cluster. And they usually do it between frames of food. That's why it's so important that we build up food stores in late fall, which, you know, this is still late fall. We're not even in the winter yet. So many beekeepers were still piling on the food stores as this cold weather hit. And that's not necessarily a good thing, because when the bees come into this cluster, they don't go out to these feeders to bring in the nectar or the food, the sugar syrup, to put it into the comb. And in a lot of cases, if you have syrup inside the hive, all that's going to do is create a condensation problem because of the moisture in the syrup. So it's very, very tricky balance that you have to do there. One thing I recommend everybody have is an upper entrance. And what that will do is aid in the moisture escaping from the colony. So what I would like to encourage each and every one of you to do, if you have not seen my videos on torpor, I'm going to link them at the end of this video. Make sure you check out both of them. There is 2 of them. The very first one, I didn't know a whole lot about torpor, and then I gained some knowledge and I shared it in video too. So make sure you check out both of those videos, and I think they will enlighten you a little bit on how torpor works and how the bees respond in torpor. They almost look dead, and I know it can be very devastating to see dead bees, but it is what it is. When you find these bees that are dead on your entrance board and out in the snow, it's probably their time to go anyway. So just write it off as sweeping the bees off on the ground and moving on. I know that we are told as beekeepers that you shouldn't open a colony when it's this cold outside. But let me tell you, it is my experience that you're better off to open the colony and give them the resources that they need versus waiting for warm weather to come, which could be weeks away. What I do in the winter is I feed dry sugar and something called the mountain camp method, and I'll link that at the end of this video also. But what the mountain camp method is basically you take a little spacer, you put it on top of your colony, and that allows room for dry sugar. It's usually only an inch or two tall, and the spacer is. You put that on top of your colony, you lay a piece of newspaper, and maybe poke a few holes for the bees to come up through, and then you pour on some dry sugar. That dry sugar does two things. It feeds the bees whenever they run out of food, and it also collects any moisture in the hive. So in a way, it kind of acts as a quilting board that bees can eat. Yeah, that's pretty much how you break it down. And I am a big fan of this method. I've used it for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's worked tremendously for me. Not only feeding the bees, like I say, but collecting that moisture. It's funny to see how you pour in this sugar and it's all dry and fluffy. You come back a week later and it's as hard as a rock. It makes its own candy board, in a way. So, if you're one of these beekeepers that have very little food in the colony, you didn't get the food stores built up, and now you're experiencing cold weather, I suggest you look into this feeding ring and the mountain camp method. Works very well. Now, one way to tell during the winter is, as far as how much food storage your bees have left, is to look at their location in the hive. Depending on your setup, let's use a double deep setup for winter. If the bees are in the bottom deep, then you've probably still got plenty of food left. If the bees have already worked up into the top box, then the chances are that they've got very little food left, and they're going to rely on you to put on this feeding ring and add food above them. Because you see, bees move up in the winter, not down. So if they've already got all their food in the lower box, that's why they're up in the top box. The bottom box is empty. And I shouldn't say it's empty. What may happen is you had frames on the outer side of the box that were capped and ready to eat, but they ignored those and moved up into the top box because it had food in the center of the box. It's my observation that normally they ignore these side frames. So you want your food frames hopefully to be in the center, if not all the way across. So just a couple pointers, and I hope these help you out. Hopefully the weather straightens out and January weather will come in January, not November. Definitely have more things to do outside besides getting the bees ready. I have a lot of farm duties I need to get taken care of, and I'm trying to get stocked up on firewood before all this drastic cold stuff hits. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been informative to you and maybe give you a couple pointers. I appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed the video, throw me a big thumbs up. That'll help boost it in the YouTube search ranks and make it easier for other beekeepers to find. If you haven't subscribed, please take time to do so and make sure you click on that little bell so you get notified when I release new videos. One more thing I'd like to mention. You may have noticed my JC's Bees toboggan, or what is considered a beanie nowadays. That is available down underneath this video and on my merch shelf. You'll see a bunch of different merchandise underneath the video, and this is listed as one of those. If you like it and you would like to support me in any kind of way, that would be a way to do it. Thanks for watching, folks, and we'll see you next week.